Happy Mushoku Mondays, everybody. Welcome back to yet another Trek, the Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation novel series. We are on volume 15. It's finally happening. The volume that nobody can shut up about. It's like every volume, right? Like every volume. It's like 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. It just keeps going. No, I don't think I've ever heard anybody say anything about 17. So maybe that's the bad volume. Maybe that's the volume that's like super boring. We're going to get back into slice of life and everything. But no, anyways, welcome back. Thank you guys so much for your support. Hey, chat. Hey, everybody that's dropped by for the premiere. Thank you guys so much for your support. Everybody that supports monetarily through Patreon, tips, links, super thanks, memberships. All that stuff is greatly appreciated. It's without you guys that this would not happen. And so you guys' support just keeps things going. Your moral support, if you cannot support monetarily, is greatly appreciated. But yeah, last week was an experiment. We did a not technically live, but a react video basically is what it is. It's me actually reading the last chapters of volume 14 on recording, so you can get my raw reaction to it. Typically, I copy the context to another document and I break it down, and so I read it beforehand. So I don't think I'm going to do that. I don't think I'm going to do that anymore. That was it was a lot easier because I didn't have to do pre-editing and everything like that, but typically that's not really that much work. That's like the least of all the entire project of Mushoku Mondays. But I think the problem that I was running into was more the fact that, one, yes, I didn't know who was talking, so it was very difficult as I was recording in order to dictate who was talking when. But additionally, I found that when I was editing the last Mushoku Mondays, I ran into a lot of stuff where I'm like, I probably would have talked about that. Like, I think my mind was too caught up in the idea of how to portray the characters, how to voice each of the lines, what was each individual point was happening. Yes, I reacted to quite a bit of it, but I don't think I don't have a react mind, honestly. I'm not the type that when I see something, I jump out my seat and I start charging around the room like a doofus. I know people love that, but I'm not that type of person. I'm a genuine person. So when you see me do things, it's an actual reaction. I mean, I'll be silly every now and then, but for the most part, I don't like to put on a show. And so, yeah, I'm not really fit for that type of stuff, but additionally, I think it was distracting me too much from actually analyzing. And that's what I want to do here. These videos are analyzing. These aren't reactions. Yeah, you'll get my reaction. You'll see me bawling my eyes out when we talk about Zenith or Paula or something like that, but it's mostly just my analysis. I like to dig into this stuff, and I think breaking down and then recording on Mushoku Mondays, I pick up on things quicker, and I pick up on things more. And so I don't really want to sway from that. And I think the React stuff was sort of doing that. So yes, I have a lot of notes that I was taking while I was editing my Mushoku Mondays. A lot of stuff that I didn't talk about. So let's get into that before we start the actual volume 15 proper. Kicking things off, I just have literally a list of notes, so I'm going to probably jump around a lot. But one thing that stood out to me was the point in which Rudius first is approached by the old man. And he turns and he says, "Are you the man god, perhaps?" Which is funny because I kept thinking about that. Is this a man god? He asked his future self if he's the man god, perhaps. And he responded saying that Orsted had the same over-exaggerated response. They were the same, but he looked nothing like Orsted. Now, the thing that kind of jumps out for me, now technically having gone to the end of those chapters, is this idea that I believe that was probably a really good sign that Orsted probably went through the same stuff as his future self. This is solidifying in my mind that now there's some stuff that happens in the beginning chapters of this, which is going to completely kill one of my theories, which it could still be a thing. It just could be a little misdirection. My mindset has always been that, yes, obviously Orsted does not like the man god. Orsted, upon hearing the name, gets angry. And we got a little bit into that with the whole gate and everything in Pedagus's fortress, this idea that there's people in this world that seemingly get really angry when they hear the man god's name. Like, it triggers them to have extreme anger. And I think that this is a sign of why. There could be an innate thing. There could be a curse or something like that makes certain people triggered by that word. But this could also be a thing where it's just mainly the aspect that both future Rudius and Orsted went through the same thing. That Orsted at some point was tricked by the man god. The man god had them do a bunch of stuff, and then similarly, just like future self Rudius, at some point, he went over and said, "Thank you, Orsted. You fell right in my trap, you idiot. And so I think there was a sign there because of how they responded is so similar. Like his future self looked like Orsted when he said the man god's name. It's a good sign there that Orsted probably went through the same crap as future Rudius. This idea that they were tricked and everything. So I thought that was really, really fascinating. Moving on to my next notes, I talked a little bit about the aspect of questioning what would Rudius do the next time he runs into the man god. And I got into a lot of theories about what they would do. Like, would he hate him? Would he just like smile and grit his teeth? What all that kind of stuff? Would the man god pick up on that? But I never really talked a little bit about what is the possibility that the man god seen him talk to his future self. We haven't really gotten a full indication exactly what the man god can see. Now, we have gotten indications in the novel series that the man god knows what happens. I mean, the last visit, he talks about Etolf. He said how Etolf liked you and everything like that. So the man god is seeing what Rudius is doing. I just never got a hint exactly what he's seeing. The one theory that I had early on was this idea that I was never really sure if the man god had the same problem that Orsted did. This idea that the man god can see where Rudius is and see what's happening around him, but they can't see Rudius. But I don't think that's the case because I think the whole situation with Orsted is more of an idea that in his visions, he can't see Rudius. It's not that he can't see him right in front of him because yes, he managed to pick up Rudius and stab him right through him. So he's obviously able to see him in the present. It's just this prophecy of this future that he's seen wasn't seeing Rudius in it. So I think there's a possibility, yes, in fact, the man god knows that Rudius met his future self. Now, the question mark is there a possibility that because Rudius comes back in time, he's not going to see him? Like, again, going back to the whole Orsted thing where there's this future that he sees, maybe the man god knows all this because he's seeing a future that is present. Let me clarify because this probably sounds stupid in my own mind. Orsted couldn't see Rudius in the future, but sees him in the present. Was a possibility that the man god doesn't see Rudius in the present, just sees him in the future. That's what he's seeing. So when Rudius comes in, he's talking about Etolf. He's like, yeah, he's talking about what he foreseen before and equating it to now. So there's a possibility that the man god won't know that he met his future self because this is a future that he's talking about that the future self is not in. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully I'm explaining that right. But it does beg the question though. I'm very curious as the moment that he meets the man god again, is the man god going to go, so you met your future self? And I think that could be possibly why his future self said, don't defy him. Question him, but don't go against him. Maybe there was a possibility the future self was saying that to him to throw off the man god. Okay, so you're gonna go meet the man god. And when he gets up there, he's gonna go, oh yeah, you talked to your future self. Are you gonna defy me? No, he told me not to defy you. So whatever you want to do, that's fine. But yeah, I'm going to question you, obviously. But there's all that conversation that was in there. What is the man god going to say to Rudius, knowing full well that Rudius, at this point, would know that he's tricking him? It's very curious. I think that's what's going to be very interesting going forward because there's a possibility the man god doesn't know that he had that conversation. Again, the whole idea of a future foreseen that's no longer is. But there's a possibility that it could turn into just an absolute mind game. Every time they visit each other, they both know each other is against them, just not against them. And so it's going to turn into a mind game of how the man god can make Rudius believe what he wants him to believe when Rudius over here is going, you're tricking me. Like, there's no more question. You are tricking me. It's going to be very curious. Or can the man god somehow talk him into believing him again? Like, it's just going to come out that the man god's going to say, all right, so your future self told you that I did this and this and this. It's unfortunate. It was not me. It was somebody else. He just thought it was me. It wasn't really me. I had this other plan, and yes, I thanked him for helping me with that, but that wasn't why all this bad stuff happened. Or they were going to die anyways. They were fated to die, so I just tried to make sure that it came out with a positive outcome. I really do think that there's a possibility that man god could probably swap this into just being an absolute, again, mind game that's going to happen. I'm really curious to see how it goes. Also in those chapters, future self mentioned the idea that he never met Laplace. And that's an interesting thing because that implies that Laplace is there, and we all know that if Laplace is there, Pedagogus is after him. And so that makes me believe in those chapters that Pedagogus had killed Laplace. Now, in these coming chapters, these first two chapters, we do find out from the diary's perspective that it seems like Pedagogus killed him. I think he even states specifically that Laplace is no longer here. And he was talking to Pedagoose, so that makes me assume that either Pedagoose killed him or somebody else killed him. My next note I have is the whole thing around Beggaret and Rudius making a mistake going there. And I think as I was editing that whole section, the thing that kept popping in my mind is I think the best way that Rudius can really see this whole situation, and better for him health-wise, mentally health-wise, is to understand that Paul himself, I think if Rudius were to confront Paul right now and say, Paul, I'm sorry, I just heard that me going there got you killed. I'm sorry. I think Paul himself would probably tell him it was for the best. Now, Paul's perspective, he would say that to console his son. I did it to protect you. Don't make this into a mistake. Don't make my death and my saving you a mistake. That is a bad way to look at things. But I'd argue, and this is probably what I would have brought up to the man god as I was talking to him. Now, this is an absolute theory of my own, but the assumption here is that the longer somebody is in that crystal, the more messed up they get. Like, if it's some sort of mana sickness, some mana messing up your mind and everything like that, the assumption would be that the longer you're in that crystal, the more damage it does. My assumption is that if somebody were thrown in one of those crystals, and somebody was in the boss room at the time, and they kill the boss and the guy drops out, they might have, like, some short-term memory loss or something like that. Or, if somebody was in there for decades, my theory with Ellen Lease is probably the fact that she was in there for maybe hundreds of years. I think in that case, full wipe. Like, the mana keeps flowing through you and it just destroys your mind. And so, how worse off would Zenith be if she was in there for 2 more years? I think all hope of her, right now we have hope. She's remembering things, she's talking about things. And yes, even as we see in this chapters, she's slapped the crap out of Rudius. She has something in there. Maybe she's not able to talk quite yet, she's having problems and all that kind of stuff, but she's there. And I think 2 more years, she'd be a lost cause. So I think either way, and if you ask, and I think if Rudius asked Paul right then, hey, Paul, is this for the good? We probably could have waited 2 more years, but Mom might have been, like, more messed up. He would have said, I would have done the same thing. I would have done the same thing. Because now, at least, Zenith has a chance. Whereas if I waited 2 more years, she would be a lost cause. She would be worse. And just the thought of her retaining something would be enough to give up my life. I think that's how Rudius would really see it. But again, we don't really have a full perspective of what happens in those gyms. So, I know, we're going to, like, half this Mushoku Monday is going to be these notes. But this is why I shouldn't have done that. Anyways, also, I did realize, and I'm surprised I didn't bring it up. And I think it's, again, because I was just kind of caught up in that segment. Really surprised to see that Sylphie left Rudius. This is going to make some people angry, I know. Why I say that is because I think what most people, and this is probably more of a fault of me listening to a lot of people, Sylphie's kind of seen, and I agree, Sylphie's kind of seen as this, she's the perfect wife. She is the one that will never leave his side. And there's so much emphasis put on Sylphie and her character that she doesn't want Rudius to leave her side. She's constantly having to be at his side. Every little segment where you have Rudius needs to go do this, he needs to go do that, Sylphie's constantly, I want to go with you. It's like, no, Lucy's over here, stay with Lucy. No, Rudius, I want to go with you. She doesn't want to leave his side. She's that devoted. She will put everything else aside. And again, I've theorized before the idea of, the idea with Lucy is more the idea that I honestly do agree with Rudius' mindset that I think that she thinks that Lucy will be fine by herself because she was fine by herself. But it's still a very, very shocking to know that she left Rudius' side. More so on the idea that she left his side when he was grieving. Very painful, the idea that somebody would be willing to leave somebody when they're grieving. Now, on the opposite end, here, the chat's already going crazy right now, I'm sure. The opposite end, I fully understand her. I do not blame her. I do not blame Sylphie. The idea of her staying at his side when he was in that toxic of a state, and we get more of it in these coming chapters, and so I'll probably talk about more here. I don't blame her. He was in a really nasty state. But I will say, in Volume 14, that was kind of sad to know. Kind of sad to, with its summarized context, it was sad to know that she was leaving Rudius' side when he was grieving. Because that's like him at his worst. Now, yes, we do find out from the future self's perspective is that, yes, Ariel had to go get the throne. And so it was probably a lot of her kind of like, hey, Rudius, let me help you. Let me help you, Rudius. Let me help you, Rudius. Okay, and then at some point, Ariel's like, we gotta go. And she's like, I'll be back, Rudius. He could have probably not have heard her say, I'll be back. But that's from the perspective of 14. It's like, I kind of understand because, yes, I understand that she's going to go help Ariel when she does that. But damn, leave Rudius when he's at his worst? That hurts. That's a really sad thought. And that's like supposedly early in the whole segment of his future life. So I guess she's not as faithful as I thought she was. I guess she's not hanging around as much as she was. And again, I say, reading the first 2 chapters of this volume, I completely don't blame her because he turns into a jerk. But it was still very surprising to learn that she left him. 3 more notes. I'm going to get to these. My next note I have is the fact that I was trying to figure out what the future self seen before he passed away. And my theory at the time was this idea that, yes, when he's passing away, he, in his delusions of death, or maybe an afterlife that they have in this world, when he was passing away, he's seen the light, and they're, Sylphie and Roxy in the afterlife is literally at the gates of heaven or whatever, just literally waiting for Rudius. Like, they're that dedicated. They're like, okay, it's time. He's coming. Yeah, let's wait for him here. He's coming. Here he is. Here, and they're all in the afterlife going, you're not supposed to stand there. Come on. No, hell no. We're waiting for him. They've been waiting for him this whole time. My other theory that popped in my head while I was editing is, I wonder if future Rudius, full control over that Eye of Foresight, seen them. He used his Eye of Foresight to literally see them. Now, it's a difficulty to say that because what does he keep saying? I have no mana. He used all of his mana to get there. But it's still a nice thought, the idea that maybe he possibly recharged a little bit just before death, got just enough, and then boom, Eye of Foresight to see forward just to see them. See them standing outside the door, seeing a possible future where Rudius stays at his side and they come in the door. Again, it shows possibilities, and so one of them could have been that they came in the door, and he's able to see them. It's a cool thought to think about. Additionally, yes, because I did the Dragon Meat Nanahoshi style this week for my skip content for anime onlys, I did completely forget that gravity spells are technically used by King Dragons, and so it's not too far stretched to think that there's other magics in this world. Again, my curiosity has always been around if gravity is based off of earth magic or something like that. There's a similar element to it, or if it's just another completely different element altogether. But again, as we kind of hear from the future self, even in 14, it is talking about the idea that it is all powerful. It can do pretty much anything. You just got to know how to use it. So it's not too far of a stretch to think that, yeah, there's going to be all sorts of elements in this world. And that's it. I have one more note, but it's technically something that's super deep into these first few chapters. So yes, now that we're 21 minutes into recording, let's finally start Volume 15 again. We're not going to do that again. Hopefully I can get everything out of the way and not have to take notes like this and spend half a Mushoku Monday talking about literally something that we're going to be covering in the coming volumes. But anyways, let's jump into it. Chapter 1, The Diary, Part 1. I will say that we'll see how it turns out, but these first 2 chapters, I've only read 2 chapters. These first 2 chapters hurt. They hurt me a lot, and I was kind of curious as to why the last chapters of 14 didn't hit me as hard. Yes, there is technically an aspect here that future self Rudius died, and that should be emotional, but I think there was a disconnect there because he just pops up and dies. And so I don't really have a connection to a different self than Rudius himself. This is a different person, and I think I have that disconnect in my mind. But I have to say that after reading through the diary of his story, it's a little harder. And yes, a lot of that has to do with a little bit more graphical insight into what happens to all the characters. But yeah, let's get started. The morning after Rudius met a man claiming to be his future self, he hadn't slept at all. His mind wasn't working too well at this point, but he needed to decide what to do. His future self gave him 3 pieces of advice. Consult Nanahoshi, write edited letter, and doubt the man god without opposing him. Again, specifying don't oppose him because he's listening. It would be funny if he's like, gets in close. Don't oppose him, he's listening. Rudius wrote his letter the night before, but he wasn't going to send it until he talked to Sylphie and Roxy. Depending on how that went, he might have to revise his letter. Yeah, there's maybe a context there in the idea that, yes, if technically Sylphie or Roxy has a problem with this, you might have to reword a little bit, like, it's just not going to happen between us, but I want to be your friend. Let's be friends. I don't think that would, after reading everything coming up, I don't think that would ever actually work. The stuff about the man god sounded fine to him. I don't, that doesn't sound fine at all. I mean, yes, do that, but don't oppose that advice, I know, but still, like, everything around the man god, not fine with. The next time he met him, he let him know exactly where things stood between them. There's our sign right there. That technically Rudius is telling himself, like, he's like, yeah, I'm going to put down the law. I cannot wait for the first man god visit. I really can't. Now, he might have changed his mind after he started reading the diary, but right now, before he reads the diary, from what he's told by his future self, he's literally saying, I'm going to lay down a law, which is super surprising. That makes me believe that it's not going to be a mind game. It's not going to be him acting like he's his buddy. He's literally just going to tell him. And that might be because yes, technically through his conversation with the man god, he's already got a sense in his head that he'd probably see me talk to my future self. As for Nanahoshi, Rudius was tempted to go to see her right away. I would too, kind of very quickly. But how is he supposed to explain the situation? It was all insane. Then again, Nanahoshi was summoned from another world. His story might sound nuts, but she probably wouldn't laugh it off. Yeah, that was the whole thing with the future self even showing up. It's like, well, I mean, you have him summoning from another world. The idea of time magic doesn't strike me as too wild. First things first, he needed to review the diary. He had no idea what it contained, but he was scared to find out. He couldn't just shove it in a drawer and forget about it. It was the only record of what the desperate old man seen and did. Yeah, this is like a Pandora's box. It's an absolute Pandora's box for the reader and for Rudius himself, in that this shows me what made that dude that's standing in front of me, and it's probably not good. Even though he doesn't cover a lot of stuff he should. The diary was weathered and worn, cover scarred, pages yellow with age. Bracing himself, it read, it's been an eventful couple of weeks, you know. I met Pedagoose and got a few hints about Zena's condition, and I'll be learning more about summoning magic and teleportation soon. There's a lot to deal with, so I figured I'll write this stuff down to keep track of it all. Aisha was pretty down this morning. She found some weird mouse dead, I guess. Maybe she's not a fan of rodents. Apparently someone found a cat with petrification syndrome in the neighborhood. Scary stuff. I'll have to remind my family to wash their hands and rinse their mouths carefully. There's where it already starts. That's so sad. And it's a little bit convenient, the idea that he actually writes it down. But again, this is where he's first starting this whole thing out, and he's going to be a little bit more detailed with certain things that doesn't seem like it's going to be that significant. But yeah, the idea that Aisha's down, you're going to cover it. We just found out that Elise is pregnant. Oh, this sucks knowing what comes up too. It hurts. Elise is pregnant. Woo! I was super happy about this because again, there's a couple aspects here. One is the idea that yes, technically they've kind of stated before the idea that elves don't get pregnant often, and I would assume the whole thing with her producing gems might make that even more difficult. She has had children, obviously. I mean, we have laws and everything, but there is an aspect there that makes you kind of question with how her body is producing gems and stuff like that. You would assume that there's probably something that makes it even more difficult for her to have a child. But super, super happy. They deserve it. If anybody needs a kid right now, it's Cliff and Elise. Again, knowing what's happening kind of sucks, but it's still happening, right? Cliff looked incredibly nervous, but had a big smile on her face. Oh, this hit me when I read it. I was like, oh, a big smile on my face. I probably look like an idiot sitting there reading with a big smile on my face. Thankfully, nobody walks by and confronts me while I'm reading it. We threw them a celebration, of course. You got to appreciate good times while they're here. Future Rudius literally flagged himself. Rudius paused reading. In the beginning, it felt like a relatively mundane journal, describing studying summoning magic with Pedagoose. Wandering the floating fortress with Sonoba, looking at art. There was a lot of notes like finding a new way to make Roxy squeal, or Lucy looks just like an angel when she sleeps, but she'll be a beauty when she grows up. It was like a diary of someone who clearly was enjoying life. The first few entries were dated, but he quickly stopped bothering. It made it impossible to tell how much time has passed. Obviously, he has to forget to put down the date. Otherwise, now I can understand the later parts of this diary where, yeah, he's going to be wandering around so much. He's not going to know what day it is. And plus, it seems like he was becoming very crazy. Which is surprising how calm he was when he met his when he first met his past self. But anyways, judging by his story, it was probably 2 weeks into the future at this point. And that's when things took a sharp turn for the worse. I feel goosebumps coming up. Again, this feels so much different when I was doing the live read of the chapter. Again, I think that's because he's literally just saying it, Roxy's dead, and all that kind of stuff. With the journal, and I think it plays into, I could probably get into this now. As I read these first 2 chapters, one thing that I was curious if he'd ever bring up, and he sort of implies it, is it sort of like, it feels as if Rudius past self, reading about his future self, reading his life through this journal, it almost felt as if Rudius was constantly, and it makes sense because he's saying Roxy, he's saying Sylphie, he's saying Ariel, he's saying Lucy, he's saying Julie, he's saying Zenoba, he's saying the names of people that he knows. When somebody reads a book, they're probably going to be going, okay, what does this person even look like? You're creating your own image of what they would probably look like. But yeah, you can still kind of get sucked into it and get emotional. Again, I do that because most my bigger emotional outbreaks on these Mushoku Mondays is around the idea of relatability and kind of picturing my own family. But it seemed like as he reads through this, he's envisioning it. Despite the fact that he knows that this diary, he takes bad notes, he's not dating it, so I don't know how long this was, I don't know how old he is, I don't know the full context of everything that's happening, but he's getting sucked into it because it's his life. He's seeing himself. This is my future self talking about myself. And so it's easy for him to get locked up in it. And I feel like these first 2 chapters, he's living that life. That's why when he finally puts it down, he's feeling sick, he's vomiting, he's literally trying to get some sort of comfort. It's because he lives it. And I think that's a kind of a sense that I was getting when I was reading it, was feeling him in that life. Not the future self, because it's hard for me to connect to this future self. But connecting to Rudius now, essentially living it by reading it, that's where it starts to hurt. But anyways, yes, Roxy collapsed today. She hadn't been feeling well for a while, but now she's developed a fever. I'll have to tell the university that she won't be coming to work for a while. I tried everything up into and including advanced detoxification magic, but it had no effects whatsoever. I'm worried it might be something serious. I'll ask Cliff to take a look at her as soon as possible. The tips of Roxy's toes are turning into some kind of purple crystal. I called Cliff over right away to look at it with his eye of identification. Interesting. Apparently, she got something called petrification syndrome. It was a horrible disease that could only be cured by God-tier detoxification spell. That was interesting. The idea that Cliff is knowledgeable in medicine. We've already mentioned that before. I mean, this is something that he studied a lot. He knows a lot about. He's very high tier in healing and all that kind of stuff. And he uses eye of identification in order to identify it. Very curious. So that, again, kind of goes back to my whole question mark of what exactly does the eye of identification show? Does it say this is a crystal when he looks at her toes or whatever? Or does it say this looks like this is a crystal caused by petrification syndrome? Or did he just equate it? And just, he knew, based on, oh, well, this is this type of stone, and I've heard about petrification syndrome turning people into that. Curious. We're going to use the teleportation circles to visit Millis, and get the incantation for the spell we need. Cliff and Zenoba were coming along with me. Sylphie wanted to go as well, but I asked her to hold down the fort here. Well, we made it to Milshin. Apparently, the church keeps god-tier incantations stored deep inside the cathedral here. Cliff knows where they are, but the place is off limits to everyone under the rank of Archbishop. Very, very interesting. Does that put Archbishop above the Pope? Now, I was kind of curious about this because when I read this and everything that kind of happened, my mind started going into what could have they done differently? Because this, things go downhill from here. Well, it's already going downhill from the point that Roxy gets sick. Let's be perfectly clear. From the point that the mouse was found. But no, the curious thing here is he doesn't get into details, and I think this is for a reason. I think Refugian right here is probably being very vague on purpose. Why doesn't Cliff use his connections? Is his current self, his current identity, supposed to be kept secret so he doesn't want to bother his father? Why would he not get his father to help them? It makes me wonder if this is Refugian keeping it vague, but at the same time tipping his hand a little bit in the idea that the church is different. Like, things didn't go well with his dad. Like, possibly his dad no longer has control. That's very curious, because again, this whole thing makes me believe that Cliff went back there and was like, damn, I have no power no more. Things went bad. And maybe he even put aside his fact that he's probably at that time, if that's the case, that his father got overthrown, that he's like, I can't deal with that right now. I gotta help Rudius. Which again adds more, I like this boy. Cliff's a good boy. We're planning to break in during the night. Once we get the incantation copied down, we can just sneak back out again. Cut forward, we managed to break in just fine. But we didn't count on the incantation being a book as thick as a dictionary. It was impossible to copy the entire thing on the spot. That is a massively long incantation. It literally takes somebody days to do. I guess not really, depending on how fast you read it. We had to steal it, and then they spotted us on the way out. We're on the run now. We walked into their ambush at the teleportation circle. The circle itself was damaged as we fought. It's no longer usable. Cliff was poisoned during the fight. He's unconscious, and it looks serious. I killed a human being for the first time. I can still hear the crunch. Makes me sick to my stomach. Damn it. Damn it. Cliff. Side note, Rudius has the worst luck when it comes to teleportation circles. Like, do a better job of hiding where they're at. It's like, this is the second time in a row that he goes back to teleport and it's taken over. But that is another thing that kind of makes that difficult in the idea that this is his first time killing. And this is technically him killing, not technically a bad guy. Like, this is the guards or whatever for the church. And yes, he's desperate to get it. But it's kind of one of those things where you're doing the wrong thing and they're coming to stop you and you're killing them. This is different than a murderer running around. Now, granted, some of the like temple knights and stuff like that are killing plenty of demons and whatnot, so it's not like their hands are clean or anything like that, but it's a case where somebody's not, they're not attacking you when you're innocent, and they're not a murderer or something like that. So I think right here, it makes it a little more difficult in the idea that he killed somebody, but it was not somebody that he identified as being a criminal or a bad person. But that doesn't really matter in his mind. It could be somebody that is literally a murderer. Somebody that literally is licking his blade and it's covered with blood and he's going, I cannot wait to skew you all, just like I do everybody else. No matter what, it haunts him, that crunch noise that it made. We're making our way to another teleportation circle. Cliff's still unconscious, and it seems like they had circulated our names and our descriptions all around the country. We're wanted criminals now. I made an enemy of the Mills Church for life. This is one of those things where when I read it, I immediately think of like criticism around the series itself, and I just remember back when they had the whole Julie episode of the anime and how everybody's like, why does he just level the whole place? He's so powerful. He's super magical. He could just level it all, kill them all. And it's like, this is like literally a play out of it. It's almost like it would be so funny if Refugin wrote this after that episode aired, because it would literally be a spit in their face. Like, yeah, sure, he does this one thing and his entire life he's hunted down. He's a criminal. And yes, him wiping out this, marketplace, same thing. He'd be hunted down for life. Now, granted, there is another situation in this diary that kind of points out that sometimes they don't know, and they're that stupid. Or sometimes leadership can be stupid, I guess. Cliff died today. I don't want to write anything for a while. That hurts more knowing that he had a kid on the way. And it gets worse knowing how Elise responds to it. Cliff's a good boy. Cliff does not deserve death. Now that's another thing that kind of adds to the difficulty of it, is how I read it in volume 14. There was an indication about when Cliff died. Just that things would have gone better if Cliff was alive. It just indicated that Cliff was dead. And that could be that Cliff died when he was like 55, when he was 60 or something like that, when he was really old. But this kind of clarifies, no, this is not too far ahead. Like, this is not very far ahead. We're, again, talking probably about a month. Didn't take long. Cliff's dead. Sucks. Sucks. With a kid. Now it hurts more now knowing that there's a kid on the way, too. We managed to make it to another teleportation circle somehow. This nightmare's almost over. Nope. We were too late. I can't write anything today. He's literally like, knowing what happens, it's like he literally goes over, sits down to write something, and we failed. That's all. I think I need to write down what happened yesterday. We ran into Edis and Ghislaine at the entrance of the city. Edis started yapping at me, but I told her I had 2 wives now, and a family, and I had no time to babysit her anymore. She wandered off, looking stunned. Now, this is right after Cliff died. And so he's probably carrying the body of Cliff, and they're walking to the city. Now, he could have probably cremated him at the spot, just to make sure that he doesn't get possessed or anything like that, or turn into an undead. But he's literally, in some capacity, he's going to be carrying Cliff's body back home. And he gets to the entrance of the city, and Edis is there with Ghislaine, and she's like, I'm here, whatever, I don't know, not sure exactly how she's going to say it, She could be talking pretty snotty or whatever. And that could be like immediately like, I don't want to bother with you right now. My wife is dying. I had to kill somebody. I have a dead friend in my hand. I have no time for you right now. And yes, it does technically tap into his previous experience. He's standing right here. Okay, mind tap into who she is. Oh, it's Eris, that girl that was always cocky and always, kicking the groin in on somebody in an inn, and I had to stop her. All of his memories of her, for the most part, was him having to guide her and make her chill out. He doesn't have any sort of experience with her now. Immediately shuts her down. I don't have time. Literally, that's it. I don't have time for this. And I can see that being like super, super devastating for her. Again, because she's literally spent from the point of volume 6 all the way until now is her trying to get strong enough that she can protect Rudius from Orsted. Protect and stand at his side. Think about the idea. It's almost like the, that's a really good example, actually. It's almost like the war veteran. Some point, they go, I need to protect this country. And they join the military. And they get dispatched. They get sent out. And they're there for years and years. They're fighting, constantly thinking, I can't wait till I get back home to my family. They finally make it back home. They walk that door. Person is literally saying, I don't want you anymore. I have a new family. Move on. I fought to protect the place where you're living right now. Not exactly the same thing, don't get me wrong, but it's got similarities there. The idea of that struggle for the long time to get stronger and fight something, and you come back and everything's done. But again, I fully acknowledge that Rudius is the type that just draws his own conclusions and seeing completely different things from that whole situation than what she intended. Ghislaine shot me a look of contempt before she left. Really pissed me off. When I made it back to the house, I found everyone looking miserable. Roxy was dead. Half her body had turned into crystal by the end. The whole trip to Millis ended up being pointless. I told Annalise about Cliff's death. She slapped me in the face and ran off crying. I can't stand this. It's too much. That is a rough set of lines right there. That's literally the start of all the pain. Ghislaine's looking at me with contempt. I get back to the house. Everyone looks terrible. Roxy's dead. The goddess Roxy. My goddess. My deity. This person that's got me through so much stuff. And it gets more on that later on. I think that's what's gonna hurt me. It's gonna start hurting me. Got me through so much stuff. Somebody cherished so much. And yes, technically somebody that he's seen as more than what she even seen herself as. Seen her as something much bigger. She's now sitting there as a crystal, dead. I can't even imagine what that probably looks like. I mean, from an animation perspective, typically a lot of this stuff is kind of portrayed with very little detail. But the idea that your body is literally turning into crust, everything before the crystallization point is just becoming dead. So it's like it's slowly dying as kind of enveloping. But yes, Annalise crying. I don't think we've ever had her crying in this entire series. I think she might have had a tear or something like that in a wedding or something like that. I don't remember. But again, a pregnant Annalise. They just celebrated her pregnancy. And this is a child. This is technically the first child that she's going to have that she's going to be raising all the way. Not just raised to a point that they can take care of themselves and leave. This is my child with the one I love that I'm staying with. Oof. We held a funeral for Roxy. I can barely get myself out of bed right now. All I do is cry. I don't give a about anything. Seems like Annalise left town without telling anybody. Not sure a pregnant woman should be wandering around on her own, but that's her business, I guess. It's all starting. The downhill. We're going back. This is literally Shut-in Rudius number 3. Yeah, this is Shut-in Rudius number 3, right? Yeah, I wouldn't even equate the moments in 7 as being a shut-in point because he was actually going out to bar and stuff like that. But he does here too. Here's where things start hurting. Here's where things start hurting really bad. Sylphie keeps trying to cheer me up. It's not working. Roxy's never coming back. She was so sweet, so earnest. She's the one that brought me out of that house. She was also the one who comforted me when Paul died. She was my compass for all of these years. And now she's gone. And again, I think that speaks volumes. And again, that's the thing that always that's the thing that I always remember whenever I think of his relationship with Roxy, is the fact that she literally pulled him out of years of being a shut-in the moment she took him away from that house, got on that horse, and took him away. It meant so much to him. And she's always been technically doing that because he's always praying to her whenever he's in his darkest moments. She's literally what got him through from the point that Edis left him all the way up into the point that he got cured. It was that was what was keeping him alive. That was what was keeping him focused, was his compass. Yes, a pair of ponzu, but it's still, that's what it symbolized. I've been doing nothing but getting drunk lately. When I'm sober, I remember Roxy, and then I start sobbing. Sylvie keeps saying that I can't go on like this. But what does she know? I've lost the woman who taught me everything. There is like a mixed thing here I have, and the idea that there's a part of this that really is him sort of getting so narrow focused, which happens with loss. Don't get me wrong. I am not discounting what's happening here. I know that people like whenever I start speculating on something that it means that I'm meaning this. Just because I don't say a qualifier does not mean that I don't accept the qualifier. I love the fact that I have to do that. But no, there's a side of it that almost seems very narrow focused. And the idea that this happened and he focuses so much on it. Same thing happened with Paul. Same thing happened with his whole turmoil over, doing the same thing again the second time in this new life. That idea that he messed up and whenever he gets stuck in these ruts, it's always because it seems like his focus just gets so much on one thing. And he never thinks about anything else that's happening around him. He's not again, when Paul died and he was stuck in that whole rut and he's thinking about loss and family and his past life and all that kind of stuff. Never thought about Sylphie. Never thought about his life, his family back home. Never thought about Roxy. Never thought about Annalise, Talhand, everybody outside waiting for him. It's all in this one thing. He even thought about Zenith, but it was an idea that it was giving up almost. He does that a lot. I forget what the second point is, so we'll move on. I do get a kick out of the fact that he notes the idea that Sylphie keeps saying, I can't go on like this, but what does she know? I lost the woman who taught me everything. She's about to lose the one that taught her everything, technically. She doesn't understand what you're going through, but she's feeling it coming on. Leah started nagging me when I drink in the house, so I'm getting drunk in the tavern instead. Sometimes Edis would show up and harass me when I'm drinking. She usually yells a bunch of insults, then takes a swing at me. What is that woman's problem? And why doesn't Ghislaine stop her? Because Ghislaine just watched her spend her entire life trying to train to help you. And you literally told her, I don't want to babysit you anymore. Get the hell out of here. Again, to qualify this, it's literally me explaining it to future Rudius here. You traveled for years with her, and she grew to love you. You got to the refugee camp. At that point, you discovered that she has nothing anymore. Her home is gone. Her family is dead. Everybody but Ghislaine is gone. She has you, and she has Ghislaine. Nobody else. She said she wanted to have a family with you. She slept with you. And yes, she left a dumb note and left. But here's the context he's missing. That note was, I want to get stronger. I want to protect you from Orsted. I want to be strong enough to stand by your side. She goes up, she gets her training done. She spent all this time for that point to come back home to her family. And you literally said, I don't have time to babysit you. Get the hell out of here. That's devastating. So yeah, Ghislaine doesn't care what you're thinking. Norn isn't speaking to me these days either. She just looks at me like a piece of trash. Nobody understands how I feel. Yeah, Norn was the first one I could just imagine just walking away. Like, again, you don't have the past like Paul does. You would assume that he would gain enough that he could be able to do that by now, but no. Paul was different. He was still working. Even though Paul, yes, I joked about it before in the idea that Paul has like this pass. This idea that he can get drunk. And I mean, it mentioned in Norn's chapter, she literally gave her father a pass. And I think that was because, one, she mentioned the idea that he never comes to harm her. He never does anything against her. He would get drunk like everybody else does, but he would never touch her. But I think there was also a side of it that Paul, when he was getting drunk and getting miserable, he was still working hard to find people. He was still doing things. He was still trying to find his family. Reese right here is just getting drunk and just not doing anything. And again, I understand why, but this bothered me. Sorry, this bothered me a lot. Lately, Sylphie's been coming on to me aggressively. Keeps asking me to sleep with her and try to forget about Roxy. She's so persistent, I end up yelling at her. Why would she say something so thoughtless? Why would she think it would work? It's not just that, I guess. If I slept with Sylphie right now, I'd probably be really rough with her. I'd treat her like a stand-in for Roxy, and I'd take out all of my pain and anger on her. That can't be the right thing to do. I like this that internally, I wish that he would express this. I assume that he didn't express this. Internally, he at least understands that she's there trying to help, but he doesn't want to harm her. So this is him literally pushing her away because he doesn't want to hurt Sylphie. But that's from insider's perspective and him expressing his own reasoning. Outsider's perspective, he's a drunk, running around, doing nothing, piece of trash. At the same time, he's not getting better. He's falling into a dark state. Why Sylphie would be doing this? I think Sylphie fully understands, and again, she knows based on them telling her, last time Rudius lost somebody was Paul. And what happened after that? Roxy stepped in, bedded him, and brought him out of that despair. So I can easily see Sylphie doing the same thing. He says, why would she think that would work? Because Roxy did the same thing. I can do the same thing. I will help save you, Rudius, from this despair. The thing that annoys me, and I don't know this is exactly what Sylphie says. This literally got me angry. I literally got angry, so sorry. It just happens. Keeps asking me to sleep with her and try to forget about Roxy. Never... This is where it gets personal. Never tell somebody to forget about somebody they lost. Never tell somebody to forget about somebody you lose. Now again, this could be how he wrote it. And again, we'll probably never know because this is all we get. She could be saying, forget about Roxy's death. But he doesn't say that. He says specifically, forget about Roxy. Forget about her. Move on. Let me sleep with you. Forget about her. Come, move on. It just feels weird in the idea that somebody would ever ask somebody else to forget somebody. Because it doesn't work right. It doesn't feel right. Again, I understand the idea of forgetting death and trying to move on, but this annoyed me. And again, it kind of goes back to that whole idea of not really understanding Sylphie too much, understanding how she thinks. And it's obvious that this is breaking Rudius. And I can see Sylphie struggling with trying to figure out a way to help Rudius, that she might not understand how to console him. And again, the only way that she can probably see that I'm going to be able to fix him is to do what Roxy did with him, because that's what Roxy said, that how she fixed him. But that's just a really terrible thing to say to somebody. Moving on though, I screwed up. Some prostitute started flirting with me in the tavern. I was drunk as hell and I ended up taking her to the room upstairs. She was great in bed, of course. A real pro. But I guess all the women that I've slept with so far didn't have much experience. Really. Okay, that's not the important part. When I staggered into the house smelling like another woman, Sylphie bursted into tears. She asked me, am I not good enough for you? And then locked herself up in a room before I could say anything. Lilia gave me a real talking to. And even Aisha scowled at me. Aisha, of all people, scowled at Rudius. And again, there's a part of me that thinks it's because somebody else got in front of her in line. But no, it's obvious that he screwed up. I could still hear Sylphie sobbing in her room. She won't answer when I knock. I had it all wrong. She was willing to endure anything. She wanted me to throw my pain at her. Tomorrow, I'm going to apologize. Yeah, that is the interesting thing, because that's technically something that she has experience with too. Again, I kind of equated the whole thing with Roxy and Rudius and getting over Paul. But that's technically what Sylphie did as well. It wasn't loss, but it was, yes, technically loss of Edis. This idea that she accepted everything from him. Like, whatever can fix you, just go at it. Don't worry about me, just keep going. But again, another interesting thing in the idea that, why is Sylphie upset? Again, this is Sylphie who is very acceptant of other people. But at the same time, again, what is the qualifier that Sylphie told Rudius? Just bring them to me first. Now, she accepted the whole situation with Roxy because, again, she's seen Roxy and immediately seen that Roxy was in love. And that Rudius was in love with her, obviously. So she was able to accept that. But this is different. A random prostitute, when she's willing to give her own body to try to help him, he instead chose a prostitute. So it is another one of the situations where it's kind of a really bad misunderstandings, screw-up situation that Rudius loves to get himself into, and this idea that Sylphie is right here wanting to help him just like Roxy did. Rudius keeps denying her because he doesn't want to hurt her. He ends up getting drunk and doing something stupid and making a mistake, and she immediately equates that to that same situation. I was here waiting for you. Why will you not let me help you? And instead, you're going off to this situation. It's like, again, is that Rudius loves to get himself into some stupid situations, and it keeps getting worse as it goes on. But yes, tomorrow, I'm going to apologize. Sylphie still won't speak to me. What am I supposed to do? God, if only Elise was here. We're always shifting this from what would Master Fitz do to what would Eloise do. Technically, she was always like the love coordinator, the Cupid helping everybody else out with their relationships. Then, Sylphie disappeared, went up and left him. When I woke up this morning, I found her room empty. Well, almost empty. She left behind the clothes and other gifts I bought her over the years. Leela ordered me to go track her down right away, but I don't even know where she is right now. But I don't even know if I have the right. Sylphie has every reason in the world to divorce me. Again, this is where I struggled with the last volume, and this sort of clarifies a bit reading up to this point, is that idea that it's so shocking to know that Sylphie would leave Rudius, would ever leave Rudius, ever leave his side. Rudius is everything to her, besides Ariel. But I never thought I would see the day that she would leave him. And there was a side of me that was almost wanting to say, okay, let's build this up from the outsider's perspective. You have the displacement incident. She joins Ariel, eventually meets Rudius again, but she wants to be faithful to both of them. She wants to protect, she wants to help Ariel, her friend, but at the same time, she adores Rudius and will always be with Rudius. But yes, there was that fact there that eventually she's going to go, hey, Rudius, Ariel's going, I'll be back. I have to go help her. And she'll go off and help Ariel. And then we have this whole situation where literally Rudius is being, it is an abusive relationship. It's not a physical abusive relationship. Nothing indicated here that this is physical, but this is mental abuse situation here. He is a drunk. He's neglecting her. He's not wanting to pay attention to her. He's yelling at her, all this kind of stuff. Yes, it technically says that he yelled at her after she was coming on to him and being aggressive with him, and he basically told her to stop, and she technically said something that was hurtful to him. But this is not a healthy relationship. Let's put it there. This is not a healthy relationship. So, again, my perspective, I do not blame Sylphie for leaving Rudius. It's just a shock that she did. It's a shock that with how devoted she is to him, that she'd be willing to leave him. But there was something there that was kind of offsetting it for me. She's not leaving Rudius. She's stepping away for a moment. Like, Rudius is doing this stuff. He's in a slump. He's depressed. He's not in a good state mentally. He's grieving massively. And now Ariel needs my help. Let me go help Ariel, and I'll be back. And then we'll address this issue again. No. She left behind clothes and other gifts I bought for her over the years. This isn't Sylphie going to Ariel. This is Sylphie leaving Rudius. She's done. He won't let me help him. He's not listening to me. He's drinking, sleeping with somebody else. He doesn't want me anymore. She literally left. Left everything behind that he bought her. Doesn't even want to bring reminders of him with her. She literally divorced him. Again, I'll make this perfectly clear. I don't blame Sylphie. Yes, if I knew somebody in this situation, I would tell them to walk away from the relationship. Yes, I'd want to help the person who is grieving, but yes, I would tell Sylphie, if I was there, you need to get away from him. This is not a healthy relationship. You are miserable right now. She has every right to walk away from him. Even Rudius agrees. She has every reason to divorce him. Zenith walked up and slapped me in the face. She didn't say anything. Just slapped me. Over and over again. I guess she was telling me to get my act together. I don't think we've seen this. We haven't really seen emotion from Zenith. To get anger and frustration out of her now, it shows again another emotion that Zenith has deep inside of her. Ugh. I can't wait to see this animated. If they even animate. I have a theory. I was talking to the mods on Discord. I'm like, I have a theory they're probably not going to animate this. I have no faith in the current directing that they would probably animate any of this. They'll probably have the segment where the old man's talking to Rudius. He'll probably elaborate a little bit on certain things, but I don't have a feeling they're going to animate any of this. And if they do, it's going to be very quick montage. But I mean, there's not much in here. This is really kind of very summary. This is a diary to himself. He's not going to be super detailed. But this is not where I want to see Zenith doing things that makes me happy, because this is not a happy point. But her slapping him in the face, deserved. I decided to chase Sylphie down. From what I found out asking around the town, it sounded as if she left for the Kingdom of Asura with Ariel and her allies. There was still a few months before Ariel's graduation. Why rush back now? I didn't get a good answer, but I'm guessing something happened in Asura. I'll have to move quickly myself. I ran to Edis again. Crazy girl started blathering about how she was going to give me one last chance or something. And when I inevitably brushed her off, she started punching me. I was getting pretty sick of her crap, so I knocked her away with magic. Then she drew her sword and came after me, so I ran for it. What is her problem anyways? She dumped me years ago. Yeah, there was at some point in these diaries where I started getting annoyed by Edis, but then at some point kind of shifted it back around. I don't know if I want to get, I don't want to get into it yet. Walked into a blizzard, had to wait for it to die down. Did Sylphie already make it past this area? I'm feeling more anxious by the day. Today, I made it to the Kingdom of Asra, but they stopped me at the border. Since I'm an enemy of the Mills Church, I'm apparently considered a wanted criminal in Asra as well. I had to make a run for it before they arrested me. I'll need to find some way to sneak across the border. Managed to make a deal with the local thieves guild. It's a good thing organized crime was so pervasive around here. Apparently I'm something of a celebrity to robbers in this world. I saw envy in the way they looked at me. Word got out about my theft of an incantation from the Holy Country. I explained the situation and they agreed to have a bandit named Triss accompany me across the border. She was a pretty voluptuous woman. I'm worried Sylphie might get the wrong idea if she sees me together with her. It's like, hey, Sylphie, I'm sorry that I slept with somebody. Please come back. I screwed up. Oh, her? Don't worry about her. She's just helping me. I made it inside the Kingdom of Asra. The guild had me disguise myself with a mask and hood. As of today, my name is Ludo Ranoma. Conveniently enough, I'm suffering from a curse that will petrify me if anyone sees my face. How do you know? It's like, how do you know? Because if you did have somebody see your face, you would be petrified. This Ranoma character is supposed to be a magician from Bashran, who's come to Asra for work, traveling with his cousin, Triss, as a guide. I'm gonna note that name. This seems like he's putting way too much of this whole stinking diary. He's being very vague about a lot of things. Why is he spending so much time being putting a lot of talk into this one section? The guild really put some thought into all this. I gotta hand it to them. From what we're hearing in the taverns, the King of Asra is on his deathbed. Rumor also has that the royal princes are fighting it out for the right to succeed him. That would explain why Ariel rushed back ahead of schedule. We'll reach the capital soon. Unfortunately, the only news we're hearing about Ariel seems pretty dubious. People seem to think that she's gathering her forces to launch some kind of coup. Nobody thinks she has any chance of pulling it off, though. Ariel's not stupid enough to start a fight that she can't win. It's just a rumor. We made it to Ars today. Triss spotted Edis in a cavern while gathering information. Did the girl follow me all this way? No, that can't be. Asra was her homeland, right? She probably ended up in the same city by coincidence. No, she's following you. She's following you. Again, you're literally all she has. Ariel's gone on the ground from the sound of things. And of course, Luke and Sylphie went with her. I'm not sure where to start looking for them. We can't find them. Triss seemed to think that they already left the capital, but who knows where they'd be heading. The only thing that comes to mind is, well, maybe Ariel's joining forces with Luke's family or something. Tomorrow morning, I'll suggest that we head over to the region ruled by the Notos family. We made our way to the Milbot region, where Paimon Notos Grey Rat rules. On our way there, we heard a rumor that Ariel's hiding out in the Notos family's protection at the moment. Now I have to figure out how I get to Sylphie. Right here, I was like, yeah, probably not the case. We've already got the indication that Paimon had to make changes in who he's working with. Now I have to figure out how to get to Sylphie. I feel like it might involve more breaking and entering. For some reason, Edis was waiting for me when I tried to break into the Notos estate. She beat me up pretty good. After they locked me up in the basement, that Paimon guy showed up and verbally abused me for a while. Edis betrayed him. Edis, second greatest anime betrayal in Mushoku Tensei. Edis completely betrayed him. No, Sylphie will be second, and this will be third. So everybody's betraying Rudius. Sylphie leaves Rudius. Edis decides to beat the crap out of him and get him locked up. But now, the way it words it here, it doesn't specify the idea that, like, Edis literally is working for Paimon. I doubt that. Highly doubt that. She is not working for him. But there's a chance that she's, like, beating him up just because she's mad at him, trying to keep him straight. Or the fact that he's going to break into Paimon's place and she's trying to keep him straight. I don't know. It doesn't really indicate this idea that she's working for him. Just the idea that she beat him up and they probably, like, captured him after that point. But still, this is that point where I'm like, I'm starting to get kind of annoyed by Edis right now. And that's it. I'm probably one of the most understanding persons of her character. Again, just like Sylphie, don't blame her. Don't blame her at all, though. That Paimon guy showed up and verbally abused me for a while. The man's face looks a lot like Paul's, but that's where the resemblance ends. He seems to be under the impression that he'd come to seize control of the Notos family. After announcing that he'd execute me tomorrow and send my head off to Millis Church, he stalked out of the room. I managed to escape easily enough, but Ariel was nowhere to be found. Cutting forward, they launched the coup in the capital. That rumor about Ariel fleeing to Milbots was a load of crap. They were lurking somewhere in Ars, waiting for their moment to strike. I don't know if I can make it back in time. We're about a day from the capital now. People were saying the coup ended in a failure. Ariel had recklessly attempted to simultaneously murder the first and second princes, but they were protected by two powerful swordmasters, the Water God and the North Emperor, who'd been brought to the capital as royal guests. The assassination ended in a failure. Ariel's forces were wiped out, and she herself had been captured. They're saying that she's going to be executed soon. Her forces were wiped out, though? Wiped out completely? What about Sylphie? I can't take this anymore. Why is this happening? Where did everything go so wrong? Interesting right here. Quick note. Notice the idea that, okay, we already knew before this, based on the last volume, that Luke essentially got word from the man god, and that probably led him to taking Ariel over to Asura. And now here's where I get like super conspiracy theory in the idea that I wonder how much of this thing, everything that's happening in Asura right here, how much of this is orchestrated by the man god. Why is the water god there? Why is the North Emperor there? Why are they there visiting their royal guests, capital royal guests? Now, the answer there could be the idea that essentially because they're saying that these princes are fighting each other right now, they're going to be contacting these people. They're going to contact the North Emperor. They're going to contact the water god. They're going to say, hey, King, can you come over here and help me out? And I'll give you something in return. I'll give you power if you help me out. So there could be a political reason why these princes would probably have these people here. But it sort of like indicates that idea that, you know, they're there as guests, like almost as if maybe possibly the king or something had them over or whatever. But it does kind of make me believe that there's a possibility a lot of this stuff was orchestrated by the man god. And he possibly had all this stuff here in order to take down Ariel, just completely floor her. And again, it goes back to my theory and the idea that I think that Sylphie, I think that Roxy, these are people that the man god wants to get out of Rudeus's life. All this stuff that happened since the point of that rat leaving that basement has been the man god trying to get Sylphie and Roxy out of his life. He doesn't want them there. They're in the way. They're causing him to sit still. The man god wants Rudeus elsewhere. I'm going to write about what happened a few days ago. The bodies of Ariel's co-conspirators were on display in the royal palace's execution grounds. Luke was amongst them, and so was Sylphie. First off, there's a good sign right there. The man god's not going to lead you to something good. I'm surprised Rudeus right here, as he's reading the diary, doesn't catch that. Okay, what happened to my future self? He listened to the man god, and the man god destroyed his life. Used him as a puppet. God purposely went out of his way to get his wives killed. And here, we already indicated that Luke went to Asura because the man god seized that opportunity and sent her over there. Told Luke to get Ariel to go there. So right here, Luke's body is on display. And you know for a fact, the man god told Luke, take Ariel and go to the kingdom of Asura. There she will win the crown. That's the only way that he's going to get Luke to do this. He's going to tell Luke that she will get what she needs. If you don't go there now, you're going to lose and you'll regret it. Luke, you end up dead. Did the man god mention that you're going to go there and die? I wonder. Unless he said that if you go there, you will die, but Ariel will see the throne. Maybe he's that devoted that he would be willing to lose his life. I mean, it was assumed that he's willing to lose his life. He's devoted to her. Anyways. And so was Sylphie. One of her arms had been cut off, and there was a huge laceration across her face. A small crowd of people were throwing stones at the corpse. They were throwing stones at Sylphie and calling her a traitor to the kingdom. Whenever they hit the bodies, the crows that were pecking at their flesh flapped noisily into the air. I couldn't control myself. I burned their bodies with magic, and then I burned everyone who tried to stop me too. The hell with this country. They all deserve to burn. Whew. Yeah, it makes sense. Like right here, where he just literally gets up. He's like, I'm done. I'm done reading. Again, not a very graphically described scenarios in this diary, but right here, for once, he gets a little descriptive. Missing arm, gash across her face, crows pecking, people throwing stones. So much detail put into it because it's probably seared into his mind what he's seen there. I can't even imagine that. Can't even imagine seeing somebody that I know, somebody that I love, hung up for public display, being mocked, being spat on, basically. Oof. I'm surprised that he doesn't say I burned everybody at that moment. It does say that people that try to stop me, I burned. Like this idea that he maybe waited until a little bit later. Or maybe he just went up there right then and said, all right, burn this down. Everybody that's like, what are you doing? He just burned them too. That's kind of what happened there, because he kind of mentioned this idea later on that, yeah, he burnt like a section of this place and they didn't know that he did it. But I'm very, very surprised that the Rudeus right here didn't immediately go in there, and it probably would have failed at this point in his life. I mean, indications later on that he does get a method in order to fight better. But right at this moment, Surprised he doesn't go in there and just nuke the whole place. I'm very surprised that he has no desire to do that. Again, he's lost everything at this point. This is literally the end. This right here is the end for Rudius. I have lost Roxy. I have lost Sylphie. And everybody else seemingly hates me. Surprised he doesn't burn the whole country down. Or at least, again, try. I don't know that... I highly doubt he'd be able to pull it off. Again, especially if these people are still here, the guests. Rudius rose to his feet quickly, his heart pounding in his chest. His head was spinning. Reading it had been incredibly painful, and he didn't want it to continue. He wondered if he really had to read it. Was there no other choice? A wave of nausea washed over him. This was just some sick story some old man came up with, right? That had to be it. He didn't want to believe a future like this was possible. It was horrible to even consider. No, he needed to read the whole thing. There was valuable and crucial information in it. Yeah, I mean, already what he's pretty much read here is about the rat. He's read about at least the failures in Millis. He's learned about Eloise being pregnant, which is really great. There's one positive in there. He's learning about Edis and what she's been doing, how she's attacking him, how she's treating him. And yes, one very key crucial thing here. He's learned about what's going on in Ostra, that there is some very powerful people there, and that there is a battle happening between the princes. Like, he's getting an insight into other countries and what's going on there. And again, I'm very curious how he's going to handle, how he's going to tell, like, again, Sylphie, Ariel, about that whole situation, or even if it will matter. There could be a chance that he tells Ariel that, hey, look, I heard from somebody, I had a vision, I heard a soldier was passing through and he said this is happening. Pedigus offhand mentioned that Aramonfi was over there and they mentioned this. But yeah, there's a war happening between the princes. She might go there anyways. Like, crap, this is my chance. But again, if the princes are fighting over the crown or whatever, it's not that... I mean, technically, if she gets in there and gains the power before her father or the king dies, yes, it's more likely that she will gain favor of people and it will be a succession rather than it be her... a coup. It's essentially what she does, too, is the idea of coming in there and taking out the... whatever one of the princes ends up getting crowned king. So it might be beneficial to her to try to do it now rather than later. I think either way, certain people are not going to be accepting of her, no matter how you cut it. But again, this part right here kind of plays into what I was mentioning earlier, this idea that he is literally feeling the story. It's sick, it's disgusting, but I think it feels real. Because again, he lives with Sylphie. She is his wife. Every day he sees her. And now suddenly he's envisioning her strung up and losing limbs and gouged and having rocks thrown in her body, her corpse is up there. Looking down, he couldn't bring himself to turn the page. The thought of continuing made him sick. What new horrors awaited him in the next entry? He was literally queasy with dread. Okay, I need a break. He left the room on unsteady legs, vomiting in the bathroom toilet. Tears ran down his face. In some sense, he wrote that diary. I could feel with awful clarity exactly what he felt when his world collapsed around him. The grief of losing Roxy, the panic and hopelessness when Sylphie left him, and he could feel his devastating pain upon finding Sylphie's corpse. Puking over and over again until there was nothing left to get out, he rinsed out his mouth and left the bathroom. Sylphie was waiting outside for him with a worried look. Seeing her, he pictured her dead, scarred face, missing an arm, cold and lifeless, hung out for the crows. He immediately threw his arms around her, warm as ever. Are you thinking about your battle with Atov? Yeah. Really? Aw, there. You know, Rudy, I'm always available if you need some comforting. I know you're not half as strong as you look. She was always available for comforting. His future self ignored that, and it costed him dearly. But she left him. I'm just joking. Yeah, sorry, Sylphie. Oh, it's okay. You know, when I'm really hurting, I might mess things up. I might say stupid, mean things instead of crying on your shoulder. Huh? What's this all of a sudden? But please, don't just disappear on me. Well, if that does happen, I think I'd get upset. I might say some harsh things too. But, so maybe we'd have a fight, but we can always make up, right? Yeah, of course. Of course we can. Oof. This kind of hurts reading that. Just don't disappear on me. We might say harsh things, but we can always make up. And there's the problem. There's honestly the problem. Is that it's literally him saying, this happened, and my future self ignored her. Like, he neglected her. She offered herself, but he ignored her. But then he's remembering the fact that she left. And he doesn't want her to disappear on him. And it's so interesting to see that kind of opposite flip. Because that's always been Sylphie's thing. please don't leave me again. Back in Buena Village, he didn't leave her, but he disappeared from her life. That's the main key thing here, is don't disappear. And that's the same thing happened when they were reunited. Sylphie said, please don't disappear again. She's always afraid of him disappearing. But then the opposite thing happens. This future Rudius that neglected her, she disappeared. And here he's saying, please don't disappear on me. It's him saying literally what Sylphie has always been saying. He doesn't want her to leave him. But yes, we can always make up, but that's the problem. You need to remember that part, Rudius. Rudius felt Sylphie was so nice. How could he ever betray such a sweet little thing like her? She caught him groping a fill on her. With permission, he picked her up in his arms and headed to the bedroom. Nothing sexual, he just planned to cuddle. It just felt like he got something back that he had lost forever. Again, he lived that diary. Like, he did not read that diary, he lived that diary. It's so fascinating that it's not just a diary to him. It is his life. And it's funny to think that he would see what is there and go, yeah, I probably did that. Like, there's nothing that he's reading here. Is he going, why the hell would my future, this doesn't sound right. Why would I would never do that. What? I went and slept with somebody in a bar? Yeah, no, yeah, I'd probably do that. Like, he's literally, no, I wouldn't. No, he's literally saying, yeah, he's accepting it because he knows that if this happened, I'd probably do that. Like, I would make that mistake. He's not denying anything that's happening in that diary. Now, there is later on, he starts to kind of question himself in his decision-making. And again, I think that's partly to do with the fact that it's such a long span of time from the current time. Like, we're talking, this is like the later points in the 50 years on. Yeah, technically that stuff, he's not going to understand what he's thinking and why he'd make those decisions. Like, he even criticizes himself for thinking certain things. But it's fascinating that he's literally accepting all of it. And again, living it. It just felt like he got something back that he lost forever. Although he hadn't really lost her yet. So yeah, it wasn't easy to explain, even to himself. Here's where he's starting to struggle with it right here. This is literally where I'm talking about. He's literally going, wait, I haven't lost her yet. Wait, no, yeah, it's hard to explain. Even to myself. He lost her, but didn't. His future self lost her, but his current self didn't. But he's living it. The diary put him in a sad, sentimental mood. It couldn't hurt for a little Sylphie therapy. When Roxy came home from work, he couldn't help but follow around the house. When she settled down on the couch, he sat next to her and started playing with her braids. What's the matter, Rudy? Well, I was hoping that we could talk for a little while. We talk all the time, Rudy. Oh, is there something serious we need to discuss? No, I just want a little bit of intimate time, you know? Well, all right then. But we're not doing anything too physical tonight. Sure, yeah. I just wanted to, well, cuddle a little. If that's okay with you. That's fine with me, Rudy. Yeah, she's still dropping those hints. Like, yeah, I can't do anything too much. It's surprising that she still hasn't told him. Again, she doesn't really know for sure. Roxy sat down on his lap and leaned back against him. Cupping one hand over his shoulder, he stared down at her face. That's when he realized he had no idea what he wanted to talk about. It's so cute. That picture is so freaking cute. Lap Roxy. Cute little lap Roxy. So how was your day? Oh, it wasn't too eventful, really. Some mischievous student did send the principal's wig flying at some point, though. Oh, too bad I missed that. Let's see, what else? She had spent her whole day at work, clearly a bit worn out. Still, she took the time to humor him. They chatted about trivial things for a while, chuckled at each other's jokes. He gave her butt a grope, which got him a slap on the hand. But when he protested that he just wanted to cuddle, she sighed and allowed him to continue. They then had a bath together, him giving her a backwash and a massage. Basically, he doted on her like a son trying to butter up his mother. You seem a little needy today, Rudy. Did something happen? No, not at all. I was just thinking about how very glad I am to have you safe and sound. That's all. Is that so? Well, I did have a close scrape back at the teleportation labyrinth, I suppose. Feel free to confirm my soundness to your heart's content. While in the bathtub, she sat on his lap. As he rubbed her shoulders, he dropped a question as casually as he could. How are you feeling, Roxy? You're not under the weather or anything, right? He prevented her from catching petrification syndrome by exterminating the rodent. He was confident of that, but he wasn't 100% sure yet. Yeah, it's like that. That's a difficult thing right now is that, again, he just read a story that he knows seemingly all sake 99.99% sure that it is true that this happened. And so it's like, but when did it happen? That would literally be what I would be concerned. Truth be told, if I was Rudius in this situation, I'd almost want to bring her to Millis right now. Because again, there's nothing to say that maybe the rodents, before they went down into the basement, they gnawed on something. Maybe they got to the food. Maybe they got to something else in there. Maybe in a cupboard or something. Something that's stored that has that in it, that's been transferred to it, and then they're going to be eating it the next day. There's no way of knowing. So it's like, you almost want to be more safe than anything. There was a chance that his future self drew the wrong conclusion. What? I'm fine. Why do you ask? Oh, I don't know. I just really want you to live a nice, long life, I guess. Given the lifespan of my race, I'm quite likely to outlive you. I expect you to take good care of your health, mister. That's another sad thing. I mean, that's the whole situation that Ellen Lisa is going to be eventually facing, is that idea of, unless something else happens, the lifespan itself, yeah, they're going to outlive them. And then one day, Roxy is going to outlive Rudius. And that's a sad thought. You got it. Roxy's face lit up with a big smile. From the sound of things, she was just fine. Sylphie and Roxy were still alive. Things weren't going to turn out the way they did in that diary. He wasn't going to let it happen. With that comforting thought in his mind, he felt ready to face the rest of this awful pages. It wouldn't be easy, but it had to be done. And that is chapter 1. But yeah, like I said, this ending part right here literally solidifies what I was saying earlier, and it was pretty much in the whole section with Sylphie as well. Just, my gosh, he is literally living that diary. That diary is literally him as he's reading it. And so it's hauntingly hits home. It hauntingly hits home for him, and the idea that everything I'm reading here was something that unfolded. So it is not just an aspect of him connecting the names to real people and connecting that this guy was me and that this was the life that he led, but it's literally getting that realm of, I can't let this happen again. And again, it's this whole thing with the whole rat. It's like, literally, you double check everything, because there is a chance that it might not unfold exactly the way that he thought, because there is that fear there. He's going to read this diary and be going, oh, so this happened here, but did it happen here? Did it happen here? Even the segments where he's talking about how Ariel went to Asura and failed, that could be all what rumors were told, but not 100% true. Like the idea of the Water God and a North Emperor being there. What are the chances that that wasn't the case? What if that is a lie? It kind of goes back to that whole thing of the, revisionist history kind of stuff. It's all in like word of mouth. There's no real like 100%. So him assuming that there's a water god there might be incorrect. And doing things to possibly prevent that might not work that way. It is what his future self learned, but it could be false. So taking word for word what's in the diary could be a falsity. And you might prepare for something that doesn't actually happen because it's just what he was told in the future. That could be incorrect. But again, it does, like I said last Mushoku Mondays, it kind of dredged up all those question marks of like, how is he going to handle talking to Sylphie about this? How is he going to handle telling Sylphie or Ariel, don't go there? And it's going to be opposite to what Luke is going to be telling them. It's very interesting. And holy crap, that was a long recording just for those chapters. Let me double check the length of chapter 2. I think it's just as long. I think I'm gonna stop here. I'm sorry. I know this is like literally they go together, but I pushed myself way too hard last week with the what was originally over 3 hours long, almost 4 hours long recording that I cut up into 2.5 hours, and it took literally 2.5 nights to work on it. I can't do that again. I need to chill. I need to go back to being chill. But I'm sorry for doing just one chapter, but I'm going to cut it off there. But really, really, really fantastic start for this thing. Very extremely depressing. And yes, it only gets more depressing beyond this point. The downward spiral of Rudius. But yeah, as per usual, greatly appreciate you guys for dropping by for the premiere. Hey, chat, hope you guys enjoyed this Mushoku Mondays as always. Additionally, thanks you so much to everybody that supports the channel monetarily through Patreon, tips, links, super thanks, all that kind of stuff. Really, really, really appreciate it. It's because of you guys that this stuff keeps going. Last week, which we just literally was today's Mushoku Monday, I actually took a pause to watch it and then jump back onto here, was a really incredible Mushoku Monday. We hit over 500 viewers on that premiere. And it was absolutely incredible. All the gifted memberships, all the new memberships, all the super thanks, all that kind of stuff means so much to me. You guys are absolutely amazing. It means so much to me. But yeah, until the next Mushoku Monday, chapter 2, the diary. Thank you all for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed. Until next Mushoku Monday, y'all take care.